What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Behind the Glass Sports Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're finding us via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Breaker, Overcast, and Radio Public. You can follow us on Twitter at Brandon_Stoll for
There's
Brandon
only like
at
20
Steve
of them.
Priest. Yeah, right. Yeah, and I every time I notice this as I'm reading through it, I say YouTube twice. They're finding us on YouTube, watching on YouTube. I'm like, every time I need to take the YouTube part out because I mentioned that at the very beginning. Anyways, you can follow us on Twitter at Brandon_. Yeah, today is rough. At Brandon_Stoll for Brandon at Stephen Priest Jr. For myself, we are struggling, but we're here. And speaking of struggling, the NFL.com ranked the 8 divisions in the NFL by quarterbacks. Who's the best? Who's the worst? And it was an interesting thing seeing who they had ranked at last. I believe it was the NFC East, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
NFC East. And for those who don't know, Dallas Cowboys, New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles, Washington Redskins. So Dak for the Cowboys, obviously. Daniel Jones, second-year player for the Giants. Carson Wentz, who good, but has trouble staying healthy for Philly. And Dwayne Haskins, he's going into his second year, I believe, with the Redskins. Just haven't played much. But it's an interesting choice because we were talking off air about how we think the AFC East could possibly hold that crown with all their inexperience at quarterback if you look at who they have, and we'll go through it. But just to give a quick rundown of who they had where and who they had ranked: NFC South at 1, and
Makes
then you
sense.
have the NFC West at 2, AFC West at 3, which is kind of surprising to me, AFC North at 4, NFC North at 5, AFC South at 6, and the AFC East at 7, and obviously the NFC East at 8. When you look at this overall, though, what are your first impressions of this list? Do you like it? Do you agree with it?
I don't mind it. 1 and 2 are pretty easy, I think. The NFC South has 3 future Hall of Famers on in that division at quarterback. With one of them being or with the fourth one, struggling today. Teddy Bridgewater. Which, I mean, we don't know. I guess Teddy Bridgewater was on the right track before he got injured, so we don't really know. But, I mean, he played well last year when Breeze was out. So, as far as, I mean, if he's the worst quarterback in that division, it's pretty good. And then the NFC West, I mean, this one, you got a couple of young guys, but what? 2 of them have been to a Super Bowl. 3 of them have been to a Super Bowl. And then you got Kyler Murray being in his second year, who was the number 1 overall pick. So that's that's probably the second best. And then I think 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 3, 4, and 5. Honestly, you could put really anywhere. I think they're kind of all in the same spot. I mean, obviously you got Patrick Mahomes, who's the best quarterback in the league. So I guess that can kind of carry the AFC West to being the third best. But I mean, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Baker, and Ben Roethlisberger, that's not bad. So I mean, I wouldn't like argue that shouldn't be number 3. Like that could easily be number 3. But I mean, Drew Lock, Patrick Mahomes, Derek Carr is a solid quarterback. Tyrod Taylor has played well over the years, and they just drafted Justin Herbert. The Chargers have. So, I don't know. 3 and 4 are pretty close, and then 5 with the NFC North. You got Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, Kirk Cousins, and then whatever the Bears do with Trubisky and Foles. So, yeah, I don't know. That's 3, 4, and 5 are you could probably put in really any order, and I wouldn't mind it.
Yeah, I think for me, when I look at it, just going off of this, I'd probably put the AFC North and the NFC North ahead of the AFC West, just because Lamar Jackson, Ben Roethlisberger, really off the strength of that. I mean, when you look at the AFC West, it's really Patrick Mahomes and a bunch of unknowns to me. I mean, we know what Derek Carr is, but I mean, he's an average quarterback at best. And then when you look at, Tyrod Taylor and Herbert's obviously an unknown. You don't know what you're going to get there. Tyrod Taylor, I mean, again, at his best is average. And then Drew Lock, we've seen flashes, but it's only been 5 games, so we don't still know what he's going to be yet.
Hmm.
Whereas with Lamar Jackson, I mean, he won the MVP last year, right? I mean, he's an MVP caliber quarterback. Ben Roethlisberger is obviously a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I think Baker Mayfield's average, but just off of those two alone, I think that's better than the AFC West has to offer. And you also have a number one pick in Joe Burrow if you want to throw that in there. And then the NFC North, I mean, you look at Matt Stafford, good quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, at his peak was arguably the best quarterback in the league. I think Kirk Cousins, solid quarterback. So, and then Nick Foles, Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky, I think is bad at his job, but Nick Foles, I mean, he won a Super Bowl and he had a magical playoff run. So I think off of those alone, personally, I would put those ahead of the AFC West. Um, I would probably even put the AFC South ahead of the AFC West as well. I mean, Deshaun Watson, Philip Rivers, even though he's on his last legs, I mean, you know what you're going to get there. He's like that Hall of Very Good. I don't know if Philip Rivers is a Hall of Famer, but he's towing that line of whether he could be one. And Ryan Tannehill, solid quarterback, obviously limited, but I think there's a few divisions when I go through this that I look through, and I would probably put ahead of the AFC West. Now, it all depends on really what Drew Lock does, because if he turns into an average player right off the jump or even a star, then that 3 ranking is a little bit warranted. But it's crazy to me how old the NFC South is. Like all those quarterbacks, Drew Brees, Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, and obviously you have Teddy Bridgewater in there. But all those quarterbacks are just so old. They're all on their last legs for those teams. It's going to be interesting to see what those 3 teams do when all those guys retire and hang it up.
Yeah, well, I mean, looking at a lot of these lists, and the reason why I think I'm more okay with the AFC West being at 3 is because the age of some of these other quarterbacks and where they are at in their career. Ben Roethlisberger isn't Ben Roethlisberger anymore. You know, I'm not sure if I would put the AFC North ahead of the AFC West, because I mean, you got Lamar Jackson. Okay, well, Patrick Mahomes is better right now. Joe Burrow, we don't know, but he was picked ahead of Justin Herbert, so I'm going to take Joe Burrow. So, okay, fine. Baker Mayfield and Drew Lock, I think, I don't know. I mean, Baker struggled a lot last year with all those weapons. Drew Lock went 4-1. We don't really know yet. I don't know. I kind of want to make that a push in a way. And then Derek Carr and Ben Roethlisberger, at this point, I'd rather have Derek Carr. So I think I would still have the AFC West slightly ahead. Not by a lot, but I mean, just slightly. And I think the difference is Patrick Mahomes. And with the NFC North, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is getting up there. He hasn't been what we've seen as far as his MVP level of play. We haven't seen that the last 2 years. He's gotten hurt. I mean, I don't know. Is his prime just not as long as, you know, guys like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning? You know, is he just kind of falling off? There's question marks around him. Matthew Stafford, there's a lot of question marks around Matthew Stafford. Is he at this point done in his career? Kirk Cousins, average dude. I mean, he's a slightly above average maybe. And then, yeah, the Mitchell Trubisky, Nick Foles thing. I mean, I don't really like Trubisky, but as far as Nick Foles goes, he had one magical playoff run. Is that something? I mean, he got hurt in Jacksonville and wasn't able to come back because of Minshew playing decently well. So I don't know. If Nick Foles was that great, I feel like they would have brought him back. So I'm not sure if that division. I get the argument of Aaron Rodgers is great, Matthew Stafford can be slightly above average or an above average quarterback, but like at this point in their careers, I'm not sure anymore. So that's why I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I kind of get it. You know, I mean, the AFC South, same thing. Philip Rivers, Tannehill, well, they won off the backs of Derrick Henry, so
Yeah.
I mean, Ryan Tannehill is not really
Literally.
that good. Gardner Minshew is going into his second year. He struggled towards the end of the season, And Deshaun Watson is Deshaun Watson, but is he better than Patrick Mahomes? Is he better than Lamar Jackson? No. So I don't know. I actually really, the more I'm looking at this list, I think the only thing that I don't like is that the NFC East is last. The NFC East should not be last in my mind. I would take Dak Prescott, Carson Wentz, Daniel Jones. Honestly, I would put them at 4. I would put them at 5. I'm not sure if that's better than Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Baker, and Ben Roethlisberger. So I think I would move them up to 5. But other than that, I mean, I like the list. And then, yeah, like you said, the NFC South is old. But, I mean, you got 3 future MVPs, or Hall of Famers, 2 of which have won the Super Bowl. A third has been to one. I mean, and then Teddy Bridgewater is Teddy Bridgewater. So, I don't know. This is a pretty good list.
Is Matt Ryan a Hall of Famer?
I think when it's
or is he
all said
Hall of
and,
very good?
I think when it's all said and done, I think he'll be in the Hall of Fame. Because I think he's still got quite a bit to go. Let's see, how old is he? He's 35. I don't know. I mean, the thing is that team. If you look at his numbers, that team hasn't really, like, other than him, they haven't really lived up to any of their expectations except for 1 year. But he's lived up to it. You know, he's put up the numbers year after year, consistently been a top 5 quarterback in the league, numbers-wise. So, yeah, I think so. I mean, if you have Marino in the Hall of Fame, putting up the numbers that he did, I think the fact that Matt Ryan has been to a Super Bowl and has put up the numbers that he has, and he still has 3 to 5 more years where I think they could possibly make it to another Super Bowl. Yeah, I think he'll make the Hall of Fame.
Looking at his career, he's been in here since 2008. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like 10 plus years. I'm not going to go through and count all that, but it looks like off the top of my head, I mean, from 2011 to
12 years.
Geez, ever since 2011, I mean, he's thrown for over 4,000 yards. He's never thrown for over 5,000. He's gotten close in 2018. He threw for 4,924. The most touchdowns he's had in the season is 38, which is really good. Looks like he's never thrown over 17 interceptions in a year. I don't know. I guess when I think Matt Ryan, I think, like I said, I just think it's like Phillip Rivers. I think really good, a really good quarterback. I do think you could win a Super Bowl with Matt Ryan, but I don't feel like Matt Ryan is ever like one of those guys where you're like, he can lead us by himself. And maybe that's a poor argument to say he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. I think for him, longevity is probably going to be his best friend. The longer he can put together these numbers, the better. It's kind of like Frank Gore for me. Like Frank Gore, I mean, he's been playing in the league for like 15 plus years. When I think Frank Gore, I don't think Hall of Famer, but a lot of people seem to think like Frank Gore is like a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame, which when you look at his numbers, okay, like he's up there in terms of all-time rushing yards. But to me, I don't know. There's just certain players in this league that I look at and they're really good, but I don't feel like Hall of Fame good.
Yeah,
I don't get that type of feel with Matt Ryan.
Looking at his last 2, or at least last season, 26 touchdowns, 14 picks. I think it really depends on what he does. It's a lot of it, the inconsistency with whether it's him or the team. But you look at 2016 when they made the Super Bowl, 38 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Then the next year, 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. And then the next, 2018, 35 and 7. So it's just inconsistency this year or this past season, 26 and 14. So I think it's just, it really depends on what he does over the next 4 years. If he continues to put up, close to 30 touchdowns, 12 or less interceptions, over 4,000 yards, and they're making the playoffs, maybe they get to a Super Bowl and win one. Then I think he does. But I mean, it really does depend on the next few years, for sure.
Yeah, and looking at his accolades too, I mean, he was rookie of the year in 2008. He was obviously the MVP that year they went to the Super Bowl, and he also won Offensive Player of the Year. So he had just a crazy year. He's a four-time Pro Bowler. I mean, that like the All-Star game in the NBA, it's something you can look at, but I wouldn't put a whole bunch of stock into. It's always the first team, whether it's all pro or all team. He's only got one first team all pro, and it doesn't look like he's had any other all team nods in his career. So, I mean, and he was 2016 first team all pro. So that year, again, he just went absolutely nuts. That offense was stacked with the young Freeman, Tevin Coleman, Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu. I mean, that team was just nuts. I mean, they came here and just ran through the Denver Broncos like they were nothing. But I don't know. I mean, I like Matt Ryan, but I don't know. For me, it just seems like he's not.
Here,
I just don't get Hall of Fame with Matt Ryan. But like you said, though, if he can string together 3 to 4 more years, and maybe he gets another 3 Pro Bowls, maybe a couple second team All Pro or another first team All Pro, and just continually keeps his team relevant in the playoffs. Because for the past few years, they've been kind of shoddy. Ever since they blew that 28-3 lead, which woof. I mean, it's been rough.
But he's played well though. That's the thing. I mean, that's the difference. That I mean, as far as every year going into the season, I'm like, oh yeah, Atlanta's gonna be really good, and it's either their defense is completely just crap, or they can't run the ball. But the passing game is always there. So I don't know. I'll give you these numbers from a Hall of Fame quarterback. 61,000 yards, 420 touchdowns, and let's see, 252 interceptions. Completion percentage over his career, 59.4%. So looking at Matt Ryan right now, he's at 51,000 yards, 321 touchdowns, 147 picks, and 65% percentage.
See, the only thing I don't like about that, because I'm guessing that's a Hall of Famer that played in like the 90s.
Yeah.
We have to adjust that, because obviously in the 90s they weren't chucking it around like they were in today's game. I think this group of quarterbacks probably. When did the league really shift to more passing? I would say the first team is that maybe that 2011 Green Bay Packers teams. So like around then, those Patriot teams in those Super Bowls against the Giants were really throw heavy. So probably like around like 2000, like the 2010s. So I'll say, from the 2010s on, I think this group of quarterbacks that will eventually go into the Hall of Fame, you have to judge differently.
Here's another one
than
then.
The others.
Let's see. 61,000 yards. Or no, that's 71,000 yards. 72,000 yards. 539 touchdowns, 251 picks. 65% completion percentage. First ballot Hall of Famer.
So it's a little bit more of a sample size, or a little bit more.
So can Matt Ryan over the next 4 to 5 years get 20,000 more yards, close to 200 more touchdowns? I mean, that's a lot, 539. I don't know. And this is first ballot Hall of Famer, easily in. Can you guess who? Yeah.
Okay. He only had 539. I thought he had like 550 something.
Oh, 539.
I mean, yeah, I just think if Matt Ryan can string together a couple more seasons, then maybe honestly, like, if I'm not a voter for the Hall of Fame, so it doesn't really matter what I think in terms of if he gets in or not. But just for me, I guess, just my gut feeling when I think Matt Ryan, I don't think Hall of Famer. Same with Phillip Rivers. I think, now that's not to say that those guys aren't good quarterbacks, because obviously I've taken them over anything we've had since Peyton Manning.
I would take Matt Ryan over Phillip Rivers though. I think Matt Ryan's had a better career for sure. I mean, just go and look at their numbers.
I think it's debatable. I mean, they both had really good teams. I mean, obviously, Phillip's never been able to get over the AFC Championship hump. I mean, because he just could never beat the Patriots.
I mean, okay, well, let's look at Aaron Rodgers. He has one Super Bowl.
Rodgers is an interesting one, and that's what I wanted to ask you about too. Doesn't it feel like with Aaron Rodgers, there's just a lot that is left to be desired with his career? Like
Yeah.
he should have more. It feels like he should have more for a guy who in the league who is probably the best at his position for about 4 to 5 years. It was him and Tom Brady neck and neck, but I'll say this, he was the most talented quarterback in the league easily. It just feels like there's a lot left to be desired with Aaron Rodgers' career. And that's probably due to the fact that he's had injuries
Hmm.
consistently throughout his career.
I was just gonna say both Matt Ryan and Aaron Rodgers have played. Obviously, Rodgers sat for 3 years, so they have played 12 years, the same amount. Aaron Rodgers has played 181 games. Matt Ryan has played 189. Rodgers has thrown for 46,946 yards. Matt Ryan has thrown for 51,000 yards. Rodgers has 364 touchdowns. Matt Ryan only has 321, but close. Ryan has 147 interceptions, and Rodgers has 84. Completion
That's
percentage.
it?
Yeah.
He only has 84 interceptions in 12 seasons of play.
Yeah, that's
Oh my
pretty good.
God, that's nuts.
Completion percentage is 64.6 for Aaron Rodgers. Matt Ryan is 65. So one guy is a shoe-in first ballot Hall of Famer who has less yards, slightly more touchdowns. He's played less games because he's been hurt. The only and same percentage, or 1% less than Matt Ryan. The only difference really is the interceptions. Matt Ryan's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. One has won a Super Bowl, one went to one and lost. So
Dude, that's a nuts ratio.
Second, third ballot. I'm not saying Matt Ryan's a
I can see
first
that.
ballot,
Sure.
but second or third, depending on the class. Yeah, he will be in the Hall of Fame, and it's not going to take that long. Really, it's not. I don't think it takes more than 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that. But I do think it's important for him to string together, though, a few more.
Well, what about
seasons.
Aaron Rodgers, though? Is he a first ballot Hall of Famer?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. See, with Aaron Rodgers,
But
I get a
see, I
completely
just feel
different
like
feel.
that's I guess the
But I
feel
mean,
is
yes,
different.
the numbers are obviously comparable,
But
but
really,
obviously
but is the
too.
feel really that different when his
Okay, who would you
teams?
rather have at their peak, though? I mean, with your starting a team, who would you
Well,
rather have at
yeah,
their peak?
his Aaron Rodgers' peak is higher. Just because. Well, what's Matt Ryan's peak here?
Okay, don't do this. We already did this with Chris Middleton.
His best
You already wanted to
season.
trade these guys.
His best season is 4,900 yards, 38 touchdowns, 7 picks, pretty much 70% completion percentage. Okay, Aaron Rodgers' best year. Okay. 4,600 yards, but he had 45 touchdowns and only 6 picks. And his completion percentage was 68.
You're really making the argument like
Look,
there's an
I'm
actual
just saying,
argument to be had here.
Based on just numbers, and that was, by the way, only in 15 games.
But numbers are always contextual too. So
okay,
what do
this,
your eyes tell you?
Because I was watching Colin Cowherd's show, and he said, and I like this idea of doing this. Take a player's best year and his worst year out. And the rest of his seasons, that average
What he
is what he is, right? I like that. And if you do that with these two guys, I think they're pretty close. I think Aaron Rodgers is slightly ahead because of the interceptions. But other than that, I think if you take their average, if you take their best year and their worst year out, and you take their average based on 16 games, so injuries and all that isn't a thing, and you just kind of take their average, I think they're probably pretty close. And if you look at their records too, I mean, Rodgers went 6-10, 11-5, 10-5, 14-1, 11-5, and I think that was kind of the peak. 6-3, 12-4, and then ever since though it's been 10-6, 10-6, 4-3, 6-9-1, 13-3. So it's been kind of I don't see Matt Ryan's record here. I need to look at.
Rodgers also has double the accolades though. So he's got 2 MVPs. He's got a Super Bowl. Obviously, that's not double, but he's also got twice as many Pro Bowls and twice as many first-team All-Pros, though. And I think if you just go off the eye test, like, yes, I like that idea too of, take a player's worst season out, their best season out, because obviously their low isn't what they are. Their highest peak isn't consistently what they are. I like that. But I think you have to go off the eye test too. And we know that Aaron Rodgers is significant, maybe not significantly,
his
but
ability to
there's
move
a
in
gap.
the pocket, ability
There's
to
a
run.
gap between him and Matt Ryan. And
Matt Ryan, you can argue too that Matt Ryan has consistently had better talent around him. Julio Jones.
Yeah, I would say so. All around talent, for sure. Yeah, I would say that. I think he's probably had a better all around team because you have to remember too, he got a Hall of Fame tight end early in his career in Tony Gonzalez. I'm trying to think if he had any really great running backs.
No, but
early.
they had flashes. So they had that guy. I forget his name, but he played in San Diego.
Michael Turner.
Yes, and he had a massive year. But they've had flashes. Like Freeman has had flashes. Tevin Coleman has not flashes, but just one-offs, certain years where they're just great, and they've had that, whereas Aaron Rodgers really hasn't. So, look, I'm not saying Matt Ryan is better. I'm just saying when it's all said and done, he's not that far off.
I agree with that. I can agree with that. I'm not saying he can't ever be a Hall of Fame. I just think if I'm going off of right now, if their careers ended today, I think Aaron Rodgers is a first ballot Hall of Famer. And for me, Matt Ryan wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame if their careers ended today. Now, obviously, if Matt Ryan can go out and put together a few more 10-win seasons, maybe get another playoff berth, maybe go at least to an NFC championship game, earn 2-3 more Pro Bowlers, maybe get another first team All-Pro, then I think, okay, maybe not first ballot, but yeah, maybe, second time around, third time around. I think for him, the longer he would have to wait is probably the worse for him. But, as with any player, honestly, because then generations change and people just forget about you and who you were. Yeah. But, I mean, at the end of the day,
and he has a winning record, 109-80.
And a lot of that is because of him, because he is a good quarterback.
Yeah.
So I just, when I look at him, I just don't. I don't know. It's the same thing with Phillip Rivers and Frank Gore.
It's just not that automatic, Hall of Famer, like Aaron Rodgers. But yet, Aaron Rodgers' numbers and what he's done lately is just like, So
and a lot of that too.
There's so much missing from Aaron Rodgers.
Right, and I think a lot of that too. It's you just mentioned it. Aaron Rodgers really hasn't had the greatest talent around him. He's had guys like Donald Driver early, and then he had Greg Jennings, but he never really had a great running back or a consistent running back. They were always going through running backs. Their offensive line was always pretty good.
He's had Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams.
Yeah, but the defense has always been kind of hit and miss. Ever since that Super Bowl win, the defense is always it's been him carrying the team, and the defense wasn't great. When he had a good defense,
as much as you do.
Yeah, right. So it's just
no,
you can pay a quarterback. Hold on, no, you're not going to get me on that. You do pay a quarterback. You do pay a quarterback. You just what happens when you pay a quarterback like that? You have to hit in the draft. That's it. That's the trade-off. If you're going to pay a quarterback, you have to hit in the draft. That's important. Because when you have him on a rookie deal, then it's okay. We can bring in and spend money elsewhere.
And
when we pay him, we have to hit.
Yeah. Neither of those two teams have. Really, the only team you can say that has done it was the Patriots.
Well, if you look at Bill's drafting history, they're which is kind of funny. The Patriots don't really draft well. If you look, and part of that probably is because they're always. Right, but part of that is always because they probably draft so late. So, I mean, they're not getting their shot at the best guys, which I guess if you had to choose one, would you rather draft well or just win all the time? I'd rather win all the time. But
that's not solely because look, Brady's the greatest of all time, but, it's not solely because of him. You know what I mean? Like, that the way, they've won all the Super Bowls that they have and been to all of them and whatever. It's not just because of him. It's because they've also had, Bill Belichick, and the way they've built their teams the same exact way year in and year out. and he's a great defensive-minded head coach. And they always seem to have, they don't seem to have the names on the defensive end, but they're always in the top 5, top 10 as far as defense goes.
Yeah,
And so they're just they're just great at building teams. Whereas you look at Atlanta, Green Bay, I don't know, some of these other guys that some of these other great quarterbacks, even Seattle, they it's just they're not able to get there consistently because they're not building these teams from the ground up the way really they should.
because
And
they have the two pillars. They have the continuity, which is why if you're Cleveland, you can't just keep firing coaches and going through quarterbacks every 2, 3 years. You're never
same with
going to
Denver.
turn your franchise around doing that. You have to eventually settle on a coach for at least a good 4 or 5 years, give a quarterback a shot. And if he's not that guy, hopefully you get the quarterback
Right.
because then it's just a waste of time.
Obviously, that's the
But
key.
that's not the answer. And that's the Denver Broncos are so close to
They
being
are.
that team.
They
They're
are.
so close. And I don't think, and this is a natural transition, we could just get here because our next topic was going to be is John Elway's GM legacy dependent on how Drew Lock performs. The Denver Broncos are so close to becoming the new Cleveland Browns because they keep going through head coaches like it's nothing, and they keep going through quarterbacks like it's nothing. And part of it is because, John doesn't trust in one guy for so long, and I think fans have to realize the answer isn't always, oh, just fire him, just get rid of him, bring in a new regime, because once you keep doing that, then you keep changing the culture, you keep
Right.
changing the continuity of
Especially
team, the
with young
chemistry,
quarterbacks.
and yes, and then you lose guys like you're really talented players. Then guys like Cortland Sutton, the Von Millers, Chris Harris's, those type of players, they don't want to stay because there's no continuity. They'd rather go to a team that's already got stuff established and in place, and win there. When you go through like a freaking turnstile of quarterbacks and coaches, it's just not the way to build your franchise.
Yeah, and I think one real quick, like another, I guess, quarterback coach duo that we could see really controlling the league here in the next 5 to 10 years is Kansas City. Andy Reid,
Mhm.
Patrick Mahomes, and all that talk of fire Andy Reid, fire Andy Reid. He's not it. He's not it. Stuck with him. Stuck with him. Stuck with him. Finally got him a quarterback, and look what happens. And he's a great coach. And you finally got him a great quarterback to go along with them, and they finally win. And now it's like, okay, well, in the next 5, 10 years, they could pull off. They could be the next Patriots.
Mhm.
So when you look at Denver, yeah, it's been you have Trevor Siemian, who is a young guy who's been sitting under Peyton Manning. Okay, well and then let's give him a shot, but he's gonna have a short leash, and he has a short leash, and he gets pulled, or I think he got hurt, so you put in Paxton Lynch, who you just drafted in the first round. And how many games did he play? and
Maybe
and
like
look,
3,
there were
4.
other issues behind the scenes, and there's reasons why he didn't get those opportunities to play. But at the same time, you drafted this guy in the first round, and you just threw him out, like, with no second chance whatsoever. And I get there was reasons, but at the same time, it's like, you you drafted this guy in the first round, and you gave Trevor Siemian a really short leash unfairly to him because he started off really, really well. And it's just like it's just a disaster. Like, you have no path that you're following. You're just like, we're just gonna continue to search through guys as quickly as we can to find the next guy as quickly as we can. Well, you can't find the next guy if you only give them 2, 3, 4 games. You can't. It's impossible. And then you try and bandage it up with guys like Case Keenum and Joe Flacco. And a year ago today, which is crazy to think, but a year ago, I said that the Denver Broncos are one of the top 3 worst run franchises in the NFL, along with the Washington Redskins, and should I even had the Browns ahead of them? I don't remember who I had. I had the Redskins and Honestly, I can't really remember who else it was, but they were, they were in the top three because they were just you go out and you give 18 mil or whatever you give to Case Keenum. You give the same amount to Joe Flacco, who, by the way, both guys were given up for younger quarterbacks. So there's a reason why, other teams are trying to go after other quarterbacks and instead of trying to re-sign these guys. So it was a constant just put a Band-Aid over it on the most important position on your team instead of, okay, let's go look through the draft. And obviously the draft history wasn't really good with Brock and with Paxton Lynch, but again, you took those guys in late first and in the second round. You didn't really give yourself a chance to grab a guy who, can you imagine if Mahomes was drafted 10th, 14th?
Yeah, 10, somewhere in the teens.
And that's Paxton Lynch draft, right?
No.
No?
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah. Oh no, that was the year after.
He was the same draft. Can you imagine if they chose Paxton Lynch instead of Patrick Mahomes?
Who did they take in that draft? Was that
in which draft? In Paxton's draft?
Yeah.
That's a good question because that was 2017. So that had to have been was it Shane Ray? No, maybe not Shane.
They took Garrett Bowles.
Yes, there you go.
And
boom.
did they trade down or no?
No, they
stayed at 20.
They picked him in the 20s somewhere.
Yeah, well, they picked him at 20, so they had the 20th pick. If you would have done your homework on the quarterbacks, like Kansas City did, you could have either moved up and tried to get Mahomes.
Well, who's the quarterback at that time? Was it still Paxton and Trevor?
Yeah. And
so
that's when they signed Case Keenum.
That's the thing.
So you need a quarterback desperately, and you have a great defense, and you have weapons around him because at this time you still have DT and Sanders. So you have the team. You just need, again, like everyone was saying at the time, you're a quarterback away. You're a quarterback away. Well, if you're a quarterback away, in most cases for teams, they go ahead and they move up in the draft because you don't really need to pick another, safety or a tackle or a line, whatever. You need a quarterback. What do these teams do? They give up a lot to go and get their guy. Well, in this draft, they obviously didn't do any homework on quarterbacks because Patrick Mahomes went at 10. Well, at 12, Deshaun Watson went. So what are you doing? You obviously didn't do your research on quarterbacks. If you really needed, and those guys dropped, if you really needed a quarterback, move up. Move up with Cincinnati to 9. Move up to Carolina with 8. By the way, Carolina picked Christian McCaffrey at 8. Like, wow, that was a good first round. Other than probably the top 3 picks. But, like, move up. Move up with Cincinnati, who took John Ross, who they probably took just because they didn't know what, they probably would have moved down if they got the right, if they got the right deal. Move up, because Mahomes and Deshaun Watson were the second and third quarterback taken. Trubisky was second, who, by the way, was a complete shock that Trubisky went at 2. Mm-hmm. You could have easily moved up. I get moving from 20 to 8 or 9 is a lot. It's a lot. But if you really think you're a quarterback away, and if you would have done your quarterback and saw those 2 guys, okay, well, those 2 guys are going to be, solid quarterbacks. I mean, you're getting taken at 10 and 12. You're the second and third quarterbacks taken, and probably should have been the first and second if, Chicago wasn't so stupid. I mean, you have to do those things. And if you look at the next year too, I mean, it's the same thing. You have opportunities to move up. Actually, I think they got Bradley Chubb at 5 the next year. So I don't really remember the 2018 draft. But again, it's just like, go get your guy. That was Baker, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, who you could have drafted Josh Allen. There was a lot of talks of them moving up to try and get Sam Darnold. But you'd be in a very, very different position right now if you had those two guys. And look, you get lucky with Drew Lock. And this Drew Lock's draft, I don't know why he dropped as far as he did, because I remember looking at the mock drafts throughout the year, and he was consistently a top 10 guy. So I don't really know what happened, but they got lucky because he should have gotten in the first round. They should not have gotten him in the second round. And that's not hindsight 2020. That's looking at the mock drafts before the draft and seeing him in the top 10 consistently in every mock draft, and he didn't go. Like, I don't know what happened. I don't know if someone released, like the Broncos released an injury report or something to other teams, or tried to sabotage. I don't know what happened, but something happened, because he shouldn't have gone in the second round. He should have probably been drafted in the top 15. Like Dwayne Haskins went at 15.
Right. Well, and I think too, when you look at that 2017 draft, part of the reason why they probably didn't move up, and Patrick Mahomes wasn't like billed as this like franchise changing quarterback. He had it was a real, they knew the talent was there, but he was kind of all over the place with the ball, kind of careless with the ball, they felt. And if I remember right, he was just kind of like a gunslinger, but he needed some work. He needed some polish on him, but he had the talent. He had the arm strength, obviously.
That's the thing.
But they needed someone to work on him.
That's every quarterback. Right.
No,
they
for
have
sure.
the talent. A top 10 talented quarterback has the talent to be a superstar quarterback. And you just have to take that shot. You can't be afraid of moving up to go get your guy.
But the reason that they probably didn't do that is because John Elway still thought he had his guy in Paxton Lynch, who is still on the roster, because he's a first-round pick, and he didn't want to give up on him. So that's probably why he didn't do that.
Yeah,
and again, it all just comes back to, they didn't have a plan. First off, they had no plan of a direction of where they wanted to go at coach and at quarterback. And that there's so many factors that go into that. And probably the biggest one is your owner was absent. You don't have a real owner in place. Obviously, we know what happened with Pat Bowlen. His health was already in decline, and he wasn't around as much. So you have that going for you. Then you draft a guy like Paxton Lynch, which if you look at drafting Paxton Lynch, it will never make sense.
No.
Because John Elway drafted a guy who obviously had the physical tools, but he drafted him from a spread offense and tried to square peg, round hole, whatever you want to call it, him into that Gary Kubiak type of offense that he ran in the 90s, which he was never going to be able to run. So from the jump, it was already a bad marriage. And then you try and do that. Oh, it shouldn't be a shocker that he struggles there trying to do that. And then you continue to try and force him to fit your mold and your stereotype. And then on top of that, he's not really a worker at that position, which with research, like you're mentioning, you should probably be able to find out, which they didn't do. And so it's a constant clash of, he's not working, he's not fitting. Well, at the end of the day, what great teams do is they adapt and they evolve and try and fit things around their best players. If he's not fitting in yours, maybe cater to his skill set, which they never did either. So it's just a continuous cycle of bad decisions, bad mistakes, and then you ride with him too long. You eventually cut bait with him. But let's go back before Paxton. You had a guy in Brock Osweiler who you kind of soured the relationship with. Obviously, you had a Hall of Fame quarterback, so that was a tricky situation to navigate, and you win a Super Bowl. But if Brock stays and he re-signs here, what does that look like? What does his team look like? Because Brock was more of a fit for that style than obviously Paxton Lynch was. That probably didn't fit Brock the best, but I mean, he was at least, he could run that offense. We saw him hold down things in that Super Bowl year, but then you let Brock go, and then you go through the Paxton years, and then you never really bought into Trevor Siemian, but then we find out Trevor Siemian was never really that guy anyways. Right. And then you have guys like Sloter come in and Chad Kelly, and you don't really give them the chance. Well, Chad Kelly obviously just weeded himself out. He got beat over the head with a vacuum stick, not stink. And then Kyle Sloter in training camp, this guy's performing, but you have VJ come out and say, we're not actually giving him a fair shot. We're not looking at him. Why would you limit yourself? What if the Seattle Seahawks did that in training camp when they just signed Matt Flynn to that huge deal, but they see Russell Wilson is balling out and they're like, you know what? We're not going to listen to what our eyes are telling us. We're going to go with Matt Flynn.
Kyle Sloter hasn't really done anything since.
Exactly, but it's things like this that at the time you don't know, but that's what I'm saying though. They're limiting
You have to
themselves.
find out.
Yeah, and they're just
Yeah.
continuously they're in this box of thinking. Now probably it's changed a little bit, obviously, but then you miss on those quarterbacks, and then you go from
Now you're
John's
afraid to draft a quarterback.
exactly, and now you go to Band-Aids. Now you go to Case Keenum, who had one great year. That was it. And I think me and you both were on the same train of this guy's not going to work. He had one great year, a really great team around him. I don't think we should do this. And what do? They do it. Oh, shocker. He doesn't work out. And then you go from one to another in Joe Flacco, who's not only coming off of injury, but he hasn't been great since that Super Bowl run. And so it's just a hodgepodge of just misses and misses and misses. Where would they be if they didn't have Drew Lock? If they didn't get Drew Lock
Yeah.
and he didn't shine, where would this team be now? Would they have drafted a quarterback in this past draft? Or I mean, it's
Like I said,
or a different quarterback. I mean,
they got really lucky with Drew Lock, and this whole thing of, how a lot of people say that, like, when everything was happening and when they were missing on draft picks, and they resorted to drafting or signing guys like Case Keenum and Joe Flacco. Even like throughout, fans, media, whatever, it was, well, obviously John Elway's not, he doesn't have the eye for drafting quarterbacks, and blah 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 blah. Well, hold on, let's look at where he's drafting these quarterbacks. He's drafting them in the second round. He's drafting them at 26 for some stupid reason. Like, look at the history of the NFL. Yeah, you got some, rare one like Tom Brady and Russell Wilson, and like those are rare, very lucky, rare scenarios, right? Where those guys drop because of, physicals or whatever, and it's just random luck. But for the majority of taking quarterbacks outside the top, I would say 15. I mean, it's awful. So if you really want to go out and get your guy, like I was saying, if you really want to go out and get a quarterback, get your guy, you have to move up in the top 10 or top 12. You have to. You cannot wait. You have to go out and get those guys. And that's why I'm saying, like, in that 2017 draft, or in any draft, but specifically that 2017 draft, you got guys like Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson right there. They went 10 and 12 when they should have gone 1 and 2. But, or at least in the top 10, and they dropped a little bit. And, those teams, I'm pretty sure Kansas City traded up to go get Mahomes. They traded up to go get their guy. And like that's, and I don't know if Houston did or not, but you have to know which one you have to know which quarterbacks are your quarterbacks, and you have to go get them. You can't just, if they drop, great, because that's been kind of the, I guess, thing with John Elway and their drafts, and it still is, and it drives me nuts. But they just sit there and wait, and they're like, whoa, someone will drop to us that we like. And, over the last couple of years, they've gotten lucky with that. Chubb dropped to them, who they really liked, but they didn't think would get there, and not a lot of people did. And he was there for the taking. Instead of, they could have had options to trade up to, whether they wanted him or Sam Darnold or whoever. They could have traded up and went for it, but they sat there. And again, you get lucky because Bradley Chubb gets there, and at pick 5, you should be able to get a great player either way. So they were okay with it. But again, in all these other drafts, you just sit there at 20 and you take Garrett Bowles because you like Garrett Bowles, but it's you could have traded up and got someone who you really loved, and that's the difference. And the same thing with this, with the Drew Lock draft. You sit there at what were they at? 15?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're at 15.
Yeah, 15. Yeah.
Or no, not 15. You're at 20 again. So you're at 20, and you can trade up.
Well, they were at this past draft. They were at 10.
Well, yeah,
they?
I'm looking at the Drew Lock draft.
Oh, the Drew Lock. Okay.
Yeah. So you're at 20 in the Drew Lock draft. I feel like they might have traded down.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. They were at 10 because they traded down to
Oh,
get
right.
Noah,
Right, right,
um,
right, right.
because they were at 10, and then
Yeah.
Pittsburgh took Devin
Okay,
Bush.
so this is yeah. So you could have stayed where you're at and got Devin Bush, who you probably could have really used. Or you could have traded up and got again. I don't know if they just didn't love Daniel Jones, or Josh Allen, but they could have traded up and got their quarterback. Got their guy who I'm pretty sure John Elway liked Josh Allen because he was always at his games in Wyoming. I mean, he was constantly at those Wyoming games. So instead of staying at 10 and oh darn Josh Allen didn't drop to us. All right, well I guess we'll just you know trade down because we don't like anyone else. Like no, do you like him or not? Do you love this quarterback or not? Do you think he can be your guy? Okay, is he? Okay, yes. Okay, fine. Go get him. Go get that guy. And again, they didn't do it. And what was this? So this was yeah. So this is your last draft. Yeah. So you trade down. You grab Noah Fant. Okay, whatever. And at that point, though, Drew Lock was supposed to be a top 15 quarterback. But the reason why he didn't, I'm guessing, is because all these other teams had a quarterback that they liked. Other than Miami, I don't know what Miami was doing. I don't know. It really doesn't make sense to me why he dropped. There was really no reason. I don't think he had any injuries.
I think it was just a bad last season at Mizzou. He just didn't play well as he did because the year before, I think he had a really good season. And then also, I think there was, concerns with his type of like technique issues. He likes to kind of throw off of his back foot and do stuff like that. So
I
I think it was
guess,
stuff
but
like that.
we've seen plenty of those type of guys be drafted in the first. I mean, Dwayne Haskins got drafted in the first round. That's no excuse. I mean, what was Washington doing? I don't know. Whatever happened, they got lucky because Drew Lock was supposed to go in the first round. I think a lot of people. He went to the draft. I mean, right? Or did he? Maybe he didn't.
That's a good question. I don't remember if he went or if he didn't.
I mean, all I remember though is because
No, he did. He did.
he
Yeah.
did, yeah. Because this was a draft where I was like, go get a quarterback, and I thought that they were going to come out with either Josh Allen or Drew Lock at 10. That is just in my mind. That's what I thought. I thought they were either going to trade up and get one of those guys, or they were going to stay at 10 and just grab one of them. And 10 came around, and Drew Lock was still there. I was like, okay, well, this seems like a pretty obvious pick. They traded away, and then you're at 20. Oh, Drew Lock is still there. Why is Drew Lock still there? We'll grab him. No, okay, well, we got Noah Fant. Okay, well, that was weird. Second round comes along, and you're at, 41? 41. You take Dalton Reisner, and Drew Lock is still there, and you're just like, okay, well, I guess we're just going to ignore quarterbacks again because we love Joe Flacco. And all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, I'm pretty sure they moved up to grab Drew Lock right at 42. And it's just like, at that point, it really didn't make sense because if you really liked him, which they obviously did, but you were too scared to take him in the first round, like, why... If you're too scared to take him in the first round, and in the second round you move up to take him, but at this point you have Joe Flacco, and it's just like you're gonna take a second round quarterback to do what? It was again, like you said earlier, there was no plan. It was just all right, let's see what happens. We have our guys that we like. The guys that we love are gone, so we're just gonna trade down. It's just there's no plan. It's a mess, and I mean, how Dalton Reisner, Drew Lock fell in their laps is beyond me. But they got lucky. They got really, really lucky. And sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. But if they didn't, they would be right there with Washington, right there with Miami, whoever else.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, they got lucky, and hopefully Drew Lock is that guy because, I mean, they're going to certainly need it because if they don't, that's another quarterback John Elway missed on, and then his legacy as a GM is tainted. But since we're here, is his GM legacy kind of pinned to the back of Drew Lock? If Drew Lock works out, does that kind of salvage the narrative around John Elway's legacy? Or if he fails, does that kind of really put a stain on John Elway's legacy? Because I'll be honest with you, right now, if you look at John Elway as a GM, obviously we know what he was as a player. He's one of the best quarterbacks to ever play. That's set in stone. You can't change that. And obviously how he performs as a GM shouldn't change what he did on the field. But when you look at him as a GM, outside of, the Von Miller pick, I don't really count that for him because that was his first draft and that was kind of a given. But outside of that, I mean, these last couple drafts, it seems like he's done a little bit better with his drafts. But I mean, the majority of his first round picks in his tenure aren't still with the team anymore. They haven't signed a second contract, most of them. I think Bradley Roby was the only one to be here on a second deal of some sort, or a fifth year at least, and nobody else has. And then obviously the quarterbacks haven't worked out for him. So when you look at Elway's legacy, does he need Drew Lock to at least be a good quarterback, not like a star quarterback, just work out, be a good quarterback and be here past his first contract for his legacy to be set in stone? Because I think we can all agree too, John Elway only has 2 more years on his contract. So once that runs out, I think he's done. And what will the narrative be at the end of it?
Yeah. In my mind, I don't think Von Miller was the up till I think either last year or the year before. Von Miller was the only drafted player. I don't even say Von Miller was really drafted by Elway, but technically he was the only player drafted by John Elway that had made a Pro Bowl. Philip Lindsay made a Pro Bowl but wasn't drafted. He was undrafted. So I think it was Courtland Sutton was the first one. I'm pretty sure. I mean, and that was this past season.
And Sutton wasn't even a first round pick.
No, he was second.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you have, as of right now,
and you can't even give him credit for Philip Lindsay because he didn't draft him. He told him he was going to draft him. He didn't draft him.
Right.
He drafted David Williams.
Right now, in 2020, he has 2 of his drafted players out of the past, 8 years? 8, 9 drafts? 2 of them. 2 have made a Pro Bowl.
Has Bradley Chubb made a Pro Bowl yet?
He might have. He might have been the first one. Okay, 3. Congrats.
I'm trying to think if Bradley went in his rookie year.
I don't know.
I think he might have just missed it his rookie year.
I don't know. I don't know if he made it. And here's the thing: if he did, same with Courtland Sutton, they made the Pro Bowl because the guys ahead of them didn't go. So, what is that? I think Sutton probably should have made it either way.
Yeah, Chubb didn't make the Pro Bowl. He was all rookie team, but yeah, he didn't make it.
So yeah, you have 2 then, and Sutton was in there because of injury or whatever. Whoever didn't go. So
I think it was Hopkins who didn't go that allowed Sutton to get in.
But I think Sutton deserved it either way. So,
right? No, for sure. And he was a second team All Pro player. So I mean, his year didn't completely go unnoticed.
Right. So okay. So you got 2. Well, how many draft picks has he had? I mean, it's just I can't really think. I think 9 years, right? 2011 was his first one technically with Vaughn. So you have 9 or 10 drafts. Say you have an average of 7 players in each draft. That's 70 guys. I mean, and 2 of those 70 guys did not make a Pro Bowl. Have not made a Pro Bowl, and most of them are no longer on the team. So I would say 90% of them are no longer on the team.
And he had an entire draft. I think it was the 2016 or 2017, one of those drafts where there's nobody on the roster besides maybe one player. I think it's the 2016 draft.
Oh yeah,
I think it's that 16 draft where nobody on that team or nobody from that draft is on the team anymore.
Yeah, because in 2016 they picked Paxton Lynch. And then they picked in the second round. They had picked.
Okay, it looks like Justin Simmons and Devontae Booker. So it might have been the year before. Okay. Maybe it was the 25th. Well, yeah, maybe it was the 2015 draft. It was whenever they got Carlos Henderson.
Yeah,
So,
so
I mean,
Shane
Shane
Ray.
Ray, Tyson Brylo, Jeff Hireman's still here somehow. Max Garcia, not here. Lorenzo Doss isn't here. Darius Kilgo, I think he might be on the practice squad still. Torian Nixon, Josh Furman. I mean,
Dude's been in the league for 4 years and he's on the practice squad still.
I think he was at least a couple seasons ago, last year, I think, too.
I mean, so when you take that into account, I don't think no matter what, unless Drew Lock becomes Patrick Mahomes, even then, to me, John Elway's legacy will always be a guy who got Peyton Manning, and because he had Peyton Manning, was able to build a Super Bowl team because he got discounts off of great free agents. And so Super Bowl 50 and even 48 was all Peyton Manning in my mind. Look, John Elway had to go out and get those guys. I understand that, but those guys would have never come to Denver if it wasn't for Peyton.
Right.
And so I get Elway gets a lot of credit for Super Bowl 50, but at the same time, I still put most of that on Peyton and on Vaughn, which, okay, well, John Elway drafted Vaughn, sure, I kind of had to. I don't know. I don't think no matter what happens over the next, because think about it, if he's only here for 2 years, I guess his legacy is leaving the team better than where he found them, which is true. If Drew Lock turns out to be a solid quarterback, a guy who's going to be here for the next 10 to 15 years, and his last 2 drafts have been good, bringing in Sutton and Jerry Jeudy and all of that, then I guess if you want to look at it as leaving the team better than where you found them, essentially where you started, I guess that's, he probably will, as long as Drew Lock is that guy. But I don't know. To me, I will just always remember his inability to draft. I mean, that's what it is. And post Peyton, he took the team down a brutal path. So that's what I'll always remember. Because in 3 years when he's gone and Drew Lock is still here, yeah, John Elway drafted him, but if they win a Super Bowl with Drew Lock in 3, 4, 5 years, it will be that GM. And it will be that GM's legacy.
And one thing to consider too, if his name wasn't John Elway, does he last as long as he did?
No, he would have been fired 5 years ago.
And that's the thing. So, and I'm right there with you. I think his legacy will be, obviously you have to give him some credit because, his name probably helped bring guys here. And I'm sure played a small role.
I think.
No, I'm saying it played a small role to get Peyton here. But I think I agree with you. Peyton, he was the name.
But Denver wasn't Peyton's first choice either. He wanted to go to Houston. And Houston didn't want him.
I think it's more bad than good for John Elway's legacy as a GM, but it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out down the road. And hopefully Drew Lock, for everyone's sake, for John's sake, and for our sake, turns out to be the quarterback that we've wanted and needed since Peyton Manning left. But that's going to do it for us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Subscribe, whether you're listening via Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We thank you for listening on YouTube. You can find us on Anchor, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Breaker, Overcast, and Radio Public. Again, if you want to follow us on Twitter at Brandon_Stoll for Brandon, at Stephen Priest Jr. for myself. Until Friday, we will catch you guys then. This has been the Behind the Glass Sports Podcast.